Welcome to the Federal Tech Podcast, where industry leaders share insights on innovation with a focus on reducing cost and improving security for federal technology. If you like the Federal Tech Podcast, please support us by giving us a rating and review on Apple Podcast.
Welcome to the Federal Tech Podcast. My name is John Gilroy, and I will be your moderator. Today in the studio, we have Michelle Rudnicki. She is Vice President, NetApp U.S. Public Sector, and we're going to talk about this company called NetApp. Now, I know many listeners probably have heard of the company in the past. They've been around since 1992. In fact, they've been innovating since 1992, and that's one of the questions I have for Michelle is, how can you keep on coming up with new stuff? And I think what I wanted to do today is maybe showcase NetApp and say, look, NetApp has got a lot of new things that you may not have heard of. We're going to talk about things like ONTAP. We're going to talk about things like BlueXP and all kinds of different odds and ends. But before we begin, perhaps, Michelle, you can give our audience maybe just a thumbnail sketch of your background. You have a great technology background, and then we'll jump into questions about NetApp.
Sure thing, John. Thanks for having me here today. I've had the pleasure of working in the federal IT industry for several decades now. I spent a career at IBM working with federal and public sector customers for most of that time, doing various things around technology, software and services, and helping customers to modernize, looking at technologies such as cloud, green, cybersecurity, and the like. I moved on to a company called VirtuStream, and it was a cloud that was designed to host enterprise applications. So the cloud was designed for the applications. You didn't have to modify your applications. The cloud gave a great way for customers to transfer to cloud in an easy way. And that led me here to NetApp, because NetApp, I had known NetApp and had competed with them from a technology standpoint. They started as a small filer company, just plug it, their logo was, or their motto was, they were like a toaster. Just plug it in and it works. It starts storing your data. Over time, what NetApp has become is really, we've taken all the great things that simplicity that you could do on a network and just storing your data, to extend that out and use the same principles, but be able to manage your data in the cloud, outside of the cloud, and transferring between both. And that's where we've continued to innovate and partner with great companies in the industry to be able to deliver a broad spectrum of solutions to the federal clients, or all clients.
And it is a broad spectrum. I mean, I went to YouTube, and there must have been 50 videos on this. I go, whoa! I'm going to pick one or two arbitrarily, because there's just so much innovation coming out of NetApp. I'm going to pick up one thing, and you're going to have to run with it. Maybe explain it to me, explain it to the audience. And this is a concept. It's called BlueXP. So what is BlueXP? What's it got to do with my federal listeners?
Yeah, so BlueXP is one of our latest releases of technology, and what BlueXP allows customers to do. We've come into this world, or we've been on a cloud journey for quite some time now. People started dipping their toe in cloud maybe 10, 12 years ago, and it was one app or two apps, or using one cloud service or another. As you look across the modern IT landscape now, people are doing private clouds, they're doing public clouds, they're using AWS, they're using Microsoft, they're using Google, and they've got their data is spread everywhere. Their IT is spread everywhere. What BlueXP allows you to do is use a single pane of glass to be able to manage across your entire IT landscape, look at your data, be able to move and manage it simply and easily. It also allows you to look across not only your storage management, but looking at your IT infrastructure and helping customers with those critical things, looking for savings, simplifying, and then also looking at their sustainability. So we'll have modules in there, because that, as you know, is becoming a larger and larger concern. So how do I really measure and manage my energy utilization? So it really is an all-in-one area that you can go to, or platform that you can use to manage your technology.
Well, I got a background in radio. When you said AWS, I said, oh, bing, bing, the phrase that pays, AWS. And this brings up to the next topic is this thing called ONTAP. So you're working with AWS to save money for federal agencies, or how does this ONTAP, what's this concept all about?
So ONTAP is actually one of the innovations, or one of the critical IP products that has been with NetApp since the very beginning. It is our storage operating system that gave that simplicity so that you could just plug in and have access to your data. ONTAP is that software IP that has stayed with us as the operating system in the filers that now is available not just in on-prem, it's available in the cloud, and it's also been adopted by AWS, Google, and Microsoft as a first-party service. So you can use the same interfaces, digital connections that you use on-prem in the cloud, and you can purchase it through the hyperscaler. So FSxN is AWS's offering of the ONTAP IP. So again, making it really simple for customers to be able to look at their data holistically across the entire landscape of their multi-cloud environments.
Michelle, I'm taking notes here. AWS and Google and this and that and data management. And I have to pull a document here. And ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I have a document in front of me I'd like to present. This is the National Cybersecurity Strategy. And if you open this up, and I'm sure everyone's read this a million times, first pillar is defend U.S. critical infrastructure. I mean, it seems like it's playing right into your skill set, isn't it?
Yeah, so we were thrilled to see the National Cybersecurity Strategy come out. And actually, it's not just something for us or just for the federal. It's really something we've been working with a number of the partners across the tech industry to implement some of the principles that are laid out in the National Cybersecurity Strategy, including CMMC, supply chain, including SBOMs, and working both internally and externally outside of our company with, we also work with CISA, with our seat on the IT Sector Coordinating Council. So we're doing a lot to help to put into action everything that was laid out there. When we look at it from a NetApp itself and how we help our customers, one of the things we're actually up on the Hill helping to help them connect the dots between the cybersecurity strategy and IT modernization, right? Because your security is only as good as your weakest link. And so we need funding coming into the federal government to help them with the IT modernization because that's where some of the vulnerabilities are. And then lastly, when we look at cybersecurity, we've actually taken a zero trust approach to how we build our products. So doing that, implementing those principles in our development, and then taking into consideration what are some of the things that our customers might need, and doing certifications such as CSFC, which is the NSA's testing for commercial products or commercial solutions for classified programs. So we're doing a lot to help. Everybody has to do their part because we're all connected in this networked world.
Okay, here's the 3 words from your website: distributed, dynamic, diverse. Probably spent a lot of money having someone write that, but that's really what we're talking about. It's distributed, dynamic, and diverse, all kinds of different interoperability, different systems can connect and not connect. Earlier, I mentioned that I went to YouTube and saw all these different products that you have. And I also typed in your name, and I listened to an interview you did. And one of the first things you talked about was saving money. I said, whoa, now we got something to talk about. All of a sudden, people are starting listening. And you talked about tiering. And so from a data management perspective, so how can tiering help one of my govies save money? What is tiering, first of all?
Yeah, so tiering is the ability to take and look at your data and look how often it's used and be able to use different classes of storage that have different costs related to them. For those different forms of data. So you might be tiering both on-prem, where you use more expensive storage for your high performance applications, and you use a different class of storage for your lower performance requirements applications. You can also do cloud tiering, right? So data that you might not use as often, you're going to tier off to the cloud because you don't need it right on-prem. Again, helping you to reduce costs, and also using automated tools to be able to tell you when that data needs to be moved to a lower tier or lower cost of storage. So cloud tiering really can help you, and we call it cloud tiering, whether it's on-prem or going into a hyperscaler cloud. But cloud tiering can really be used to help you manage your costs.
So would Cloud Checker be, you pull it out of your toolbox in order to determine what tiering would be? Is that the utility that you have, Cloud Checker?
So no. Our Cloud Tiering product is the one that does Cloud Tiering, but Cloud Checker is a different offering. What we've discovered is, we come we've come at the industry from the standpoint of the data, right? Moving from the data out. As we've moved into the cloud, the other area that we've seen the need for our customers is in cloud operations. And Cloud Checker is one of our offerings that's currently going through the FedRAMP process that is put in place to help you manage your cloud spend, right? So it will look across your different your cloud bills, help you to analyze that spending, and also help agencies where if you've got a centralized bill to be able to distribute that out to the various different departments so you can allocate your budgets or allocate your costs to where the budgets actually are.
I would imagine if you're doing an analysis of a hybrid cloud or a hybrid cloud transition, there may be a point where you got to, it's like sitting down with a teenage kid and have that tough talk about the car, or you got to sit down and say, well, look, we've determined that we may have to move some stuff back on site because it's not optimized to work on, and most stuff or a lot of stuff is, but this particular set isn't. And this is kind of this is like, we have to, is this moving back or is this actually, it's saving money, isn't it? I think this is called repatriation, is it?
Repatriation, yes. We've seen a number of customers because there was such a push, right, and a good one to help customers move to the cloud, be able to gain the agility and supposed cost savings. But as you said, some applications just don't fit as well in a cloud environment, and they may be better from a cost standpoint to run on-prem. There might be other benefits of running in the cloud. You might need the agility, and you might want that. But in some cases, as you've observed the patterns of an application, you may repatriate it back on site. We've also seen that with AI, another good buzzword for you. With AI applications, often customers start doing those in the cloud to do the initial learnings and really figure out what's the AI model that I want to put in place. But then as they scale, they find that the costs in cloud may be more expensive for their particular environment. So they will look to do their testing development in the cloud, but then do that application on site. So that's a little bit of less about repatriation, but really looking at the application and the phases of your application and understanding where they're best cost optimized.
Michelle, earlier in our conversation, you mentioned CMMC and the DoD. I am lucky enough to get to interview a lot of people in the satellite community, people at Space Force and generals, and I've done I have a whole podcast on satellites and space. And I tell you what, you want to make them smile. The word resiliency, because once it gets up in the air, hey, baby, you can't get you up there and fix it. And so resiliency is really important for the military and other aspects, such as satellites too. So resiliency has got to apply for hybrid systems as well. And I'm sure this has got to be some kind of a strategy behind optimizing, because, what level of data to put where and how to manage it and where's this fit up? This is going to be pretty complex, doesn't it?
So it is. Everything in our IT environments these days does seem to be getting more and more complex. And, with resiliency, the good thing is customers have options, right? And just like we talked about before, resiliency, I think, is tied closely with zero trust, right? And how do you build the most resiliency in while also having that eye towards cost? And so, one of the things that we've seen, one of the other benefits of doing cloud tiering is you can build resiliency in as you're doing that. Whether that's just in terms of tiering the data and having it in different locations so you can be able to access it should you lose network connection, or you'd have the need to search up your compute, or doing something simply as backup, right? How do I ensure that I've got the right backup and more importantly the restore capabilities to be able to access my data, right? So from our standpoint, it's building around a data-centric strategy, building the security around the data itself that helps you to build that resilience in, because, resilience is all about being able to keep going, right? Should something happen.
Resilience. I went to your website earlier today, and for the benefit of our listeners, I think you have an ebook there, and I'll put the link in the show notes here. But the ebook is called Fortify Cyber Resilience for Your Evolved Cloud. Wow, that's pretty elegant there. And evolved. Hi, Michelle, can I evolve your cloud? I guess that's what we're talking about, though, isn't it? It's like, hey, let's put everything in the cloud. No, let's bring everything back. No, maybe put half. which half, this half, when should we change? I mean, it's like changing and moving. It is evolving, isn't it?
It is, and we've adopted that evolved cloud phrase because it really does say we're into that next wave on the cloud journey, and we're into that hybrid multi-cloud. So how do I now simplify that environment? How do I help customers to look across that? And we've just talked about a lot of the principles that we see in the evolved cloud, or the principles that need to be taken into account in the evolved cloud. And how do I do cost savings? How do I simplify? How do I make sure I have security? And then with an eye to the future, how do I look for sustainability? So it really does all come together, and it ties back to, we do it with BlueXP across that single management plane. So very excited to see how our customers are going to evolve along with us in this evolved cloud environment.
Well, the only checkbox we haven't covered today is security. And I am sure that there are some crown jewels at the DoD that involve data, probably. and a company like yours has been around for 30 years. I'm sure you're quite familiar with some important assets that are digital, have to be protected. And so I think what can happen is, if you're not careful with your enterprise architecture, you can run in situations where you may not be backing up correctly, or you may have certain systems that can back up to others and it can't. And so I would think this is, when I think about the sum total of what NetApp does, it's a lot of enterprise architecture. It's almost like, well, we've been there, done there, got the T-shirt. Let us maybe give you some suggestions for this, because you may not be able to recover if you do it this way.
Yep, certainly. And so we do a lot of work with our customers upfront to help them to design what's their best approach. Maybe the inflection point is moving to the cloud, or maybe they're just reevaluating their enterprise architecture. And how do they make sure that they're ending up in that ideal or optimized architecture as they go along? And with regard to security or cybersecurity, we work with them on their zero trust architectures, and we do it by building things into our products that they can take advantage of, right? So some of the capabilities that have long existed, your ability to snap mirror and to snap lock, and to be able to and I know those are fancy terms that we use within NetApp, but it's the ability to really take snapshots of your data and protect them with a key, so that they are protected from threats like ransomware or any other attacks, and be able to do that in a very distributed way, so that it builds in the resilience that we've been talking about within your architecture. So lots of good things that we can help customers with.
I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but if you look at the National Cybersecurity Strategy, you look at resilience, invest in a resilient future, and then shape market forces to drive security plus resilience. So this is all just, it's kind of hammering on the themes that the government wants to talk about. I'm going to go back to this concept of repatriation. It's like, no, I don't want an electric car. I want to stick with my old diesel car. So no. I mean, it's almost like, well, maybe a diesel vehicle is more efficient. I don't even know if that's true or not. But is it possible that, Michelle walks into an agency and takes a look around, uses the tools we have out of your tool bag, and goes, well, you know what? Maybe we should pull this app back on site. And is it possible that they can reduce latency and maybe improve performance if it's on-prem? Is that? I guess it's possible, huh?
It's definitely possible, and we definitely have seen customers do that. It's like anything, as you scale up and your utilization goes up, activities that might have been minor when you were just in your testing or pilot mode, sometimes it's the bandwidth, as you said, right? When I go to do that, I need to have better bandwidth than what I have access to. So repatriating that back on site is the right thing to do. In a lot of cases, though, what we've seen is just the volume of data that customers have, and the cost of storing it and moving it in and out, because our data is not static, and we need to use it in a number of different places. And so we've seen a number of customers that have said, this, we thought this would reduce our cost, but what we're seeing is it's actually increasing our cost. So let's take this one application and move it back. That doesn't say that we're not yo-yoing. It's like, everything in and then everything out. Yeah. But on a selective basis, people are making the choice to say, look, given especially some of our very large agencies, they have some pretty significant staffs and they've got some pretty significant footprints where it is less expensive for them to be able to manage their costs and manage their infrastructure. One of the other paths that we've seen some of our customers taking, though, is a little bit of, I'll call it a hybrid, is I still want to be able to pay only for what I'm using as I'm using it, not going full back to I own everything and I manage everything. And so we're working with a number of customers on consumption models, right, where they buy it as a service. It can be on their premise, but they're able to consume and just pay for what they're using. So they still get some of the nice benefits of a cloud-like environment where they can add capacity as they need it, but only pay for it as they need it. So for us, that offering is our Keystone offering, and we're working with a number of federal agencies, and that seems to be resonating pretty well for those environments where they really want to have, they look at it as a little bit less expensive to be on-prem, and they have needs to keep things on-prem, whether it's for security reasons or the like. But that's the other alternative of between fully repatriating and getting back to a CapEx and being able to move things into a more cost-effective environment for yourself.
Well, regular listeners know my daughter's a financial analyst. And sometimes if you take that first word out, finance, put in data analyst. Now, when I think of a data analyst, I think of someone really smart looking at graphs and charts and making decisions. But maybe a data analyst is figuring out what it costs to store the data. I mean, it's the same two words, but it's just, look, you go ahead and do all the heavy lifting up there, but we're going to make sure you can afford it. I mean, so maybe a data analyst in your situation is like, let's take a look at your data. What's it cost to store here? Can we transfer it to that? What's going to it's the what if scenario. I mean, it's just a different application of the term data analyst, isn't it?
Yep. Yes, it is. And we have tools that can help with that to identify what are the patterns, right? What are the networking patterns? What are the utilization patterns of your data that can help you to understand that, right? How do I tier it? How do I best look at it? And what are my applications that are probably best suited for a cloud environment versus an on-prem environment or other, right? Or some kind of a hybrid.
New variation on the term data analyst. I'll just mark that up as. So we're coming to an end here. You want to take a look and make a forecast for the next 5 years in the federal government? You think what kind of a transition is going to take place? You think there's going to be as I always say, an incident that's going to disrupt things, or what do you think is going to happen, Michelle?
Well, that
we're going to put this in concrete too. We're going to put this in concrete. You better be right, or else.
I was going to say, given the past couple of the
how could you predict anything?
The world events of the past couple of years. Okay, what now can I imagine that hasn't yet happened? So I see us continuing to evolve, right? From at least from an IT perspective. It's that rapid pace of innovation that needs to be adopted. And I think when I look at our federal environment, our customers are moving along the journey and they're having to do it faster and faster. So, I think that we're going to see the industry continue to deliver tools to our customers to help them to simplify the management of what has become complex. It's maybe more of a cycle that we've seen happen before. We saw it with distributed computing, re-centralized, going to cloud. Cloud brought everything together, but now we have multiple clouds, and it's moving out into a broader spectrum that's got it more and more complex. I think we need to simplify that again, because that's what will get us to the cost savings and really the agility that we need to keep pace with whatever that inflection point might be that comes up next, that we'll need to be able to deal with. Because at the end of the day, right, data is the fuel that helps us with the insights to run the missions, to run the businesses that we need to do. So we've got to be able to capitalize on it and use that IT infrastructure to further the mission.
Good. Well, unfortunately, we're running out of time here. You've been listening to the Federal Tech Podcast with John Gilroy. I'd like to thank my guest, Michelle Rudnicki, Vice President, NetApp, U.S. Public Sector.
Thanks for listening to the Federal Tech Podcast. If you like the Federal Tech Podcast, please support us by giving us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts.